Hello, everyone. Welcome to our podcast on Agentic AI, the future of enterprise transformation. I'm Runki Goswami, the Global Head of Marketing at Newgen. And today we are going to talk about this extremely dynamic and interesting and innovative space called Agentic AI. So as businesses are transforming today, it is imperative that we step out of the comfort zone of traditional automation and move into the world of Agentic AI. Now, Agentic AI is something that enables AI not just to execute, but also think, adapt, and act autonomously. And specifically more relevant for the world of BFSI, where decisions are complex, time-consuming, and also very dynamic. Joining me today are two leading experts, Clair, Principal Analyst at Forrester, and an internationally, rather globally recognized authority in the AI space, automation, and future of work. So thank you so much, Craig, for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And we have Rajan Nagina, Newgen's AI leader who's driving enterprise-ready AI solutions for businesses worldwide. Well, Rajan, you have an interesting background. You've been the co-founder of Number Theory that was into low-code machine learning platform. And today you're leading AI in Newgen. So welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get started. So Craig, let's start with you. There's this huge buzz about Agentic AI. So what is Agentic AI? And what is driving the need for Agentic AI? And what difference are AI agents bringing in the enterprises today?
Well, that's a big question right there. It's one that, I've never seen a term seep into the tech lexicon as quickly as Agentic. The word never used, and then about a year and a half ago, all of a sudden it was there, and now it just is accelerating in its usage. But it's very important to understand the difference between AI agents and Agentic AI. So the agents, think of them as the applications that are built by Agentic AI. Agentic AI is really a set of models, a set of architectures, a set of methods and capabilities for which you can build an agent and really advance that agent progressively along a path of more goal autonomy and more capability until it reaches the pinnacle of really being an agentic system. Now, we have a simple framework that personifies agents and helps you think about that progression and what the role specifically is of Agentic AI. And that is, we have conversational agents, which are very more simple. There's really no action component other than a human interacting with a model and maybe putting in an email for summarization or so forth. A good example of that is your Oliva, is it? A skincare
right.
use
Yeah,
case?
our clients.
Brilliant AI application. And essentially they're putting in all of their call center transcripts and trying to understand, how do I get somebody from a phone call to an appointment? And the AI was able to determine that certain keywords, certain sentence structures, certain patterns would lead to that appointment, right? A very brilliant case. Now, the next level of agent is what we call a solver agent. Now, it's a little strange because all of these agents solve things, but the solver is meant to be more of a tactical description. Basically, its goals are more narrow than the other agents we'll talk about. And the key distinction there is that traditional automation is generally in control of what the goal of the solver agent is. And that means that you have traditional orchestration, but then at one point, you may take a cryptic, human-laden element of that traditional automation and say, I'm going to build an agent for that. And you'll pop out of that deterministic automation and you'll use that agent maybe to create a score. In financial services, that might be for customer due diligence, to say that customer is okay to enter the financial system with that bank. But the key distinction is that the solver agent is not really agentic either, because the model isn't in control of the goal, deterministic automation. The worker agent is the one where you start to see the model actually gain control. In other words, there's higher levels of agency as you make this progression to these personifications. So the worker agent you have models basically control the end-to-end process. They know what the goal is, they know how to get there, they know how not to get stuck, and they're going to lace in deterministic automation at key points. So they're going to have, in their configuration, they'll have tools in their toolbox that will allow them to go off and fire off a workflow API, fire off an RPA bot, but they're in control. The next level, and the level that is truly agentic, is what we call the executive. And here, you're making connections. It's really multi-agent. You have an orchestration of multiple agents that may not be all developed with the same platform. And they are they're iterating to make decisions. If they have a indecision, they'll have a voting pattern to get the decision, and they'll keep going. An example of that would be if you are a company concerned about your ESG rating, right? Environment and social and governance. You could have a monitoring agent, that would be able to report and make the connections between your energy consumption, your DEI support for social, and your basic governance in terms of corruption and other things, right? So you see this progression. And so I'll stop there. The key point being that understanding agents are the application, and agentic AI are really the capabilities, the models, the frameworks, the architecture for which you are building different levels of agency for that personified progression.
Okay, so do enterprises today understand the term agentic AI? Is it an established terminology? Are we still working on it? Okay.
No, there are so many voices in this space, and all the voices are struggling to find their distinctive positioning. A lot of the providers, the vendors, they'll define it in a way that emphasizes maybe a strength that they have in their platform. You have a lot of confusion in the market. As an analyst, I deal with that confusion. That's why podcasts like this are good.
Interesting. Well, Rajan, over to you. Your take on the term agentic AI, and maybe also in the context of Newgen.
Sure. I think I love the definition, Craig, the way you defined starting from conversational to solver to worker to executive. It's a wonderful explanation of agentic AI. The way we look at, I think one of the things that sort of important for us to look all four of it as a spectrum, but not really one after another, because our customers have different processes. Some of the processes essentially require just conversation, and some of the processes may require more complex agents. So for us, the abstraction essentially comes from the four factor. We put together data, context, decisioning, which is cognition, and execution, which is workflow. Putting all that together, and then you orchestrate and change varying degrees to achieve what you just spoke about. These are four building blocks of the stuff, and then you can vary them, configure them in a way that you can, at some point of time, you can have, for certain processes, you have simply conversation. For example, Oliva is a case, right, where you want to understand what is happening within my calls, what are top concerns my customers are raising. It's just that these concerns are coming out of audio calls. And conversation itself is a goldmine in that sense. But also progressively moving, and there are systems of credit decisioning, wherein you really want to decide on credit decisions, but also understand a larger pattern, what's going on. Like there are decisions at a micro level, and then there are decision strategic nuances at macro level. So we look at these four parameters for our agentic systems, and also see how to contextualize all of it within the Newgen 1 stack. Newgen 1 certainly is a traditional system, and it has evolved from the place because it has these capabilities of decisioning, it has this capability of content, it has the capability of workflows. So these four gradients I spoke about, we sort of look at and how to tune it within Newgen 1 platform to make it this possible for our customers.
Fantastic. Well, I've got a whole load of questions, and these questions have come to me from various sources, and of course, two leading experts taking my questions. A wow moment for me, rather. So, given the promise of GenAI and LLMs, how do business leaders leverage its transformative power to reimagine and even perhaps rebuild the value chain? There's customer experience, there's employee productivity, and everything needs to be operationally efficient. So what's your take around this?
Well, what we found is that most of the more productive use cases we've seen are in operational processes in the mid and back office. In other words, there's more headwinds due to trust issues for brands, for example, using agents and customer self-service. right? It's going to get there. It's huge opportunity in that area. But if you're employee facing and you have an interface for an employee, just think of how most of these jobs are. You've got a pile of information that's sort of hidden in crude websites and enterprise applications, some of which are 20 years old. And their job really is to kind of make sense out of all this desperate information. So, you can build an agent that basically, allows the employee to have more of a conversation with all of that. And because the agent knows the goal, it can actually direct the employee on how to complete the job for a human in the loop and eventually complete the job itself as a worker agent. So I think that the best focus for companies now is to look for solver agents in the mid and back office where you have fewer change management issues, you have more use cases to choose from, and you're not going to have an employee walk out of the firm because they had a bad experience, right? Now, I've worked with humans that have had hallucinations before, so it's not you have issues with human employees. You're going to have issues with models, but I think you're safer in that confines of the operational processes in the mid and back office.
Okay. Same question for you, Rajan.
Complete agreement. Absolutely. I think putting this agentic system, which certainly not 100% reliable, to customer experience layer, we'll get there, but it's hard to take that shot today. It's certainly in back office for productivity. There is another element that we are discovering, and we are also building stuff around that. It's like a thinking fast and slow at this moment. Like, if you look at an individual process and the way it flows, and there are, let's say, hundreds of work item flows through that, and the agentic systems like a solver isn't helping the employee to go through it. There is a sort of very deep knowledge that you derive when you put this together at a macroeconomic level. So let's say I'm doing a credit underwriting process and my agentic system is helping you to make better underwriting decisions. But if I look at, let's say, a month of data, and this is, let's say, chief risk officer looking at it, the pattern that you derive out of it by putting this together and say, okay, what are my top issues that I'm not able to, let's say, underwrite a particular kind of customer. So when you start looking this strategic lens, it is just wonderful because you can deploy a system and the conversational agent which sort of take away the cognitive load from the executive users. While you can do that in a report form, right? So while you have agentic systems who can help you do these processes day in, day out, and you want to have a summary report with the predefined KPIs to the executives to see it, but executives certainly want to do much more, let's say, thought experiments, much more reasoning on why something is happening. And at that layer, what we're talking about is when you put conversational agent, like solver agent to do things, but conversational agent to do strategic thinking, reasoning with the underlying system, makes it truly wonderful. And it certainly bring not just operational efficiency, but also strategic decision making that sort of make the organization a little better.
Well, this gives me a segue into my next question for you, Rajan. So how is this agentic AI thing solving real-world challenges, say, for the BFSI industry?
Many. If you look at, I think Craig spoke about that, any organization has set of processes, right? I mean, you can't scale anything if you don't have processes. Agentic systems make it a little more intelligent, and hence you take a lot of cognitive load from the person who is handling that. You are helping this worker agent, in a sense, to augment human capability to make decisions. And that's what it is doing it. When you look at verticals like BFSI, there are added layers of complexity. For example, regulatory requirements, audit, transparency. Like I make a decision, industrial, let's say, agent made a decision or help you made a decision. 2 years down the line, you want to know what happened that time. And it's a compliance thing. You've got to go back and tell what happened at that time. So the ability to transparent decision making, the ability to have been able to come back and audit, the ability to comply to the regulatory needs. These are some of these governing constructs around agentic system that we are building. We call it Agentic Shield. essentially to make sure that the decision you are sort of helping people take are in line with the requirements that these sectors look for.
Yeah, so, too quickly, my favorite financial services use cases. One is I call the advisor agent, which is basically, when a call with an advisor and a client occurs, you can transcribe that call and you can have the agent summarize the action items, And if there is this is where the action component comes in, if there was an agreement to do a rollover, which we call, as a 401k rollover, that's what all these brokers are trying to do as people like me retire, is get them to take their assets out of the retirement account and move it over to them for management. A lot of forms, a lot of process, a lot of integration with, different financial services companies. You can have that done by the agent who knows exactly what forms to get from, to use, compliance forms. So you don't have the advisor that's highly paid trying to go through core systems to pull the right forms. You can have RPA bots go in and get the data from the core systems and fill out the forms for the client. You can load the forms to the client portal. You can forward an e-signature ceremony for that. It's a tremendous time savings. These advisors go into meetings every year, and they have to go through a ton of work with 20 systems to pull together all the data for that meeting. An agent can go in there and pull all that information together, into a nice summary for those meetings. Tremendous opportunities to support financial services.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So Rajan, I've heard this term GenAI, you've been talking about it a lot. It is a buzzword. So how does GenAI complement Agentic AI for BFSI or maybe other enterprises as well?
As I said, human-like. So in a way, software, we deal with software systems, we build these software systems. One of the real wonders of generative AI, specifically LLM, is to be able to build a software system that can literally talk to you. And that means, in many ways, it's limitless. Because, think of it, I have a system, I want to do something. I can ask the system to do it for me. While the system is doing it for me, it generates tons of knowledge inside it. For example, a credit decisioning agent like what we have. The credit decisioning, in the process of credit decisioning, it has so much information. It takes raw data that comes as a part of application, then it sort of look for other data elements, go in external systems, look at bureau information and whatnot. From the raw data or application to a decision being made, there is so much knowledge created. As I said, the knowledge that created for one application, and then you look at the knowledge that gets created for thousands of applications in a month. The power of generative AI is not just to look at the decisions, but you can also have a conversation of what goes behind. Bring insights that you can take it as strategies to execute your systems better, processes better. It is just wonderful. The system that talks to you, the system that allows you to think, system may actually think for you. It's just a whole new world.
Yeah, I would even go further and say it's, in a sense, a lot of our information access that the internet gave us democratized access to information. But what GenAI does, it democratizes intelligence. So it gives a level of intelligence to all people, all employees, and turns these giant piles of data into a conversation. And if I'm an insurance company, how many of you have actually read your insurance policy? It's 100 pages of words written by lawyers for other lawyers to read, very little to communicate to the human. So imagine having a conversation with your insurance policy that says, well, how long have I had this policy? How much do my heirs get if I should, terminate my life? How much am I paying for this? This is a huge opportunity for business, particularly financial services.
Mm-hmm. Well, GenAI, I think at scale is a costly endeavor. And, still businesses can't wait for a better cost-efficient solution. So how do businesses solve this time to market versus cost trade-off?
Well, it's an interesting question, particularly after the news last week with the Chinese startup that with $6 million built a model that is in many views comparable to the early versions of ChatGPT. So that's telling you there's a trend line towards models that are less resource intensive, which is a huge problem, but also are very, very capable. So the biggest cost issue I've seen with projects, and it really stems from the power of the technology, because you can see the amazement of it so quickly. But then when you try to bring it to production, you find that there's a lot more to do. And a lot of that is in the data part. A lot of that is, I need to get into that prompt window, I need to get, enterprise data from core systems, unstructured data, standard operating procedure, these kinds of things. I have to maybe sometimes put that into a vector database and use, RAG workflows to do that. It's a whole new discipline of doing that. So most of the projects that have stalled and gotten into budget trouble, they've been underestimating the amount of work on the data side. And then, of course, on the output side, you have to, have the guardrails for, any variance from normal outputs. And that piece is a bit challenging too. So you have to figure out whether you're going to use other models to validate the model output that you have, or is there a more structured approach to do that? And I've seen that too, where you just use some more traditional automation for that output processing. But there's more work there. So don't get seduced by how powerful it seems in the beginning.
No, absolutely agreed. I think the way we look at it, in Newgen is not a two-dimensional trade-off, but rather a three-dimensional trade-off, right? It's the trade-off between time to market, cost, keeping last week development aside, time to market, cost, and quality. As you just said, right? When you scale it up, what is jazzy to begin with may not be as jazzy, when you scale it up at a. And that's what we do, that's what we optimize. That is what Newgen 1 is built for. A case in point is a large banking, financial services banking customer deployed our solution, wherein we are looking at decision-making abilities that resides in the content, document essentially. So wherein if you have to make a new decision, you are going through the vast amount of previous decisions, standard operating procedures, regulatory files and whatnot. So you look at this, a new element come in, you look at it, and then go back in the content repository to figure out what is the best decision, and then execute a workflow based on the decision outcome. All of it, since it's a financial institution, all of it running locally. And that means you are bringing the cost down, you're bringing the reliability element, because people are really making these decisions which are there is a lot of value at risk of riding on that, and that you are sort of mitigating through the workflow and decisioning together. And third, the element of data security and privacy, because these are large enterprises. How would you execute all that? You need to be very, very sure about data security and governance.
You certainly don't want your data training other people's models.
That is absolutely correct. That is absolutely correct, right? So that's the wonderful trade-off that we're trying to solve.
Okay. Well, this is an interesting question I have. So, Craig, as we look ahead, if you were to design an AI agent, what would the design environment look like in 2 years from now?
Oh, well, that is an interesting question. So you see a little bit of that in what's emerging from the startups that are building agent building frameworks, and from companies like Newgen that have introduced agent building design studios. But it's more than just, so to me, it's a little bit broader. I want to expand the question a little bit, because you do need an interface that allows the user or the designer to put in a prompt that represents the goal, for whether it's solver or worker. You need a way to configure the tools that the agent will be able to access, right? In the worker case, that'll be the main path. Rather, in the worker case, the worker will be able to select those tools dynamically and actually create tools. I'm going to create an RPA bot to go do something, so that's interesting. And you will need 4 other things, actually. You'll need a very good orchestration layer, because as you move up the agentic spectrum, you're going to need more and more coordination. And it's not just APIs and bots. You're now managing models. You need the logic to understand, why this model is better for a task than this one. You need to understand their token pricing aspects. You need to understand the differences in the hosting environments. So you need this aspect of model management and orchestration, which is not there for a lot of systems right now. You also need all the things that we're just referring to in terms of security and governance and so forth. You need something on the input side for the data to manage those RAG workflows. You really need the next generation of process management is going to have to be about managing models, building agents, but then managing them as they are used in the enterprise. So it's going to be a big shift from our current process tools that we have today, but that's going to happen.
Okay. And you are the creator of products. How do you see it spanning the next 2 years?
I think absolutely what Craig said. That's the journey. I think the good thing is, in a sense, we have taken first few steps. Newgen One platform gives us that, let's say, initial step up, because it has integrated content management as a repository. It has integrated business process management systems. It has a low-code machine learning platform. It has a low-code document decisioning platform. So the things, at least some of these fundamental product stacks are available. And then the element that you have to have systems which can look at the model management, not just the model orchestration, but also the model management. It works good at machine learning level. It works well at rules, but it really does not work very well at LLM layers, right? How will you ensure that the things that you do at RAG, the things that you do at LLM are also sort of governed properly? But so we are getting there. I think the goal is very clear that we believe in deep vertical agents, because that's where we think, or executive agents in your terminology, Craig, we really sort of believe that. But the fundamental constructs of data, context, decisioning and workflows are like building blocks, and then have a slider that sort of allow you to create the agents that you want. Having this gives us that sort of technology layers which allow you to build agents. Today we have Agent Studio that allow you to build agents, do some prompt engineering and stuff like that. It also allow you to change your models, especially around machine learning layer. The goal is to build this very quickly to the setup wherein our partners can build there, because you can't be building all vertical agents yourself. It's almost impossible to do it. So sort of we're looking at building that system that is intuitive enough so that somebody else can build on it, our customers, partners and whatnot. We're getting there. It will take some time. It's a complex thing to solve, but we have the right building blocks and we have like first iteration out.
And because you're focused on verticals, vertical domain models is going to be huge as, you start to realize the costs of training data. And the ability to aggregate that. And that's what's going to be the differentiator as these models become more commoditized. I think you're on the right track with vertical.
Well, what I understand is that Agentic AI is here to stay. Of course, in 2 years, there's lots that's going to happen in this space, but it's here to stay. It is going to impact enterprises. It's going to impact lives. Something that we should look forward to, I think.
I agree.
Yep. Okay, so let's touch a little bit on the data regulation and the compliance part. How do you see these three elements playing out in the deployment of Agentic AI?
Well, as always, the compliance rules coming from the various agencies, and using agency in the traditional term there, is going to lag behind what the technology can do and what businesses want to do. So there's going to be significant tension, I would say, between the regulatory authorities, particularly in financial services, relative to what banks are going to be pushing. And it's not about the technology. These banks have spent years and years developing a process that has met all of their legal requirements, legal review, kept them out of trouble. It's the human process. It's the systematic, management of risk within their organizations, right? So that's going to be one of the headwinds for doing any of this, because it's not just bringing in a new agent to do something really clever. You've got to map that into an existing compliance process that they have in the bank. I've seen some really good optimistic things, like with Know Your Customer, for example. The big issue with anti-money laundering systems. The AMLs produce suspicious activity reports, when a transfer of a certain amount occurs. There are just a lot of false positives. There are a lot of good people using the financial system. So a lot of humans are there to deal with alerts that are created that are perfectly fine transactions. I've seen an AI agent built that is able to do a first level investigation. It's able to make the connections between the information that it has about that individual, where the city was, where they worked, what their history is, so forth, public and private information, and eliminate 50-60% of the false positives. That's pretty good. So in places where you can insert, and it's sort of this concept I had with the worker agent, if you can take an archaic process based on traditional automation concepts, but you can isolate an area that doesn't transform the process, but you can apply an agent to, that's going to be low-hanging fruit for financial services in the short term. Not to belittle the idea of transformation of work, which is what we all want to do. We want to change how we do work. This has the power to change how we work. It's just going to be very slow for financial services, which, look at the fines that these financial services companies budget hundreds of millions of dollars for fines every year, right? So they're going to be very risk averse.
What about other enterprises? Could be healthcare on the payer provider side, or maybe some other enterprises. Could be the same challenges, or?
I think similar challenges. I mean, healthcare, you have much more focus on data privacy. Obviously, with HIPAA in the US, and you have the same thing in APAC, similar things. GDPR is a very, very big issue as well. So, I think it's going to be headwinds in healthcare. I think a lot of the other industries, I think we're with the NVIDIA announcements of LLMs that are focused on the physical world and trained on the physical world. I think you're going to see manufacturing, smart manufacturing, and a lot of the physical robotics start to incorporate the cognitive side and start to bring in new ways of doing things. They'll have much more freedom. There's much less regulation. There's certainly OSHA and there are a lot of things, but there's compared to financial services and healthcare, there are other industries that I think have a more free reign. Retail, for example.
Right. In fact, you talk a lot to our clients worldwide, right? And these three, whether it's data, regulation, compliance, are the three elements which you cover a lot. What do you have to say about it?
We are approaching it is while there could be a case of let's say a lot of regulatory need in banking and financial services and healthcare, the ability to impact is also very high there. So if you place it right, the way you can transform your credit decisioning, also the opportunity is great. So the way we look at it and the way sort of we're building it is 4 layers of things. The first layer is called decisions are rooted in your data. So whatever decision the systems are taking is based on customers' data. It doesn't go out and look for other data. That's sort of ensure that the decision is true because it is coming from data. The second layer is the deployments are local or privately hosted. And that means the concern about the model is being trained and the knowledge is getting out or the data is getting out is sort of mitigated because it is deployed within your system and it's trained on your data. The third layer of it come in the models that you built is trusted because it is built on low-code platform that we have. So you can see what goes inside building a model and building a decision. I have taken a decision of this is a credit underwriting process, this is how decisioning happen. You can go double click and figure out what models, what parameters, how you have trained the model that takes decision. So the models are trusted. And finally, the layer wherein the decisions are trusted because you can audit them. As I was talking about, right? You make a decision, you want to come back after 2 years and see what happened in the decision. So the whole trust layer that we built, which is basically trusted data, trusted deployments, trusted models, trusted decisioning, is a layer that sort of give enough comfort to our, and we have customers in banking, and that means sort of people take, it is valuable, and hence given enough things possible, people really want to use it. And the other layer that we build around is essentially Agentic Shield, wherein even if I have deployed all that, build a system that you can use it, how this interface on which you are using the system, how the agents are sort of governed within the regulatory boundaries, the ethics and whatnot, everything. So these 5 things put together essentially give us that leverage to take these agentic systems.
Yeah, and I think the transparency focuses and explainability focus for compliance is absolutely critical.
True
Absolutely.
That.
That's trusted
critical,
decision
yeah.
for us.
Yes.
That's absolutely.
Well, you ensure that your clients that they are covered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I think this is such a wonderful thing to do, and I think you have to be very close to what, like it's a customer world, right? And you have a wonderful thing to do. You ensure that it happens in the way customers are looking for.
Yep. Well, I have one question. I can frame it differently for both of you. While you can tell me about what's Newgen's vision for AI, and you might just want to talk about anything at a global scale, like at an industry scale. What's the vision of AI that should be in place?
Well, I'll go a little bit blue sky and broad on you here. I was born in New York, and it was a few blocks from the Dakota, where John Lennon lived and where Strawberry Fields is. If you ever haven't been there, it's great to walk through that Central Park section. I didn't realize it was the best address I'd ever have. It was up on Upper West Side. But I like to tell the story about John Lennon because when he was 8 years old, his teacher asked him, "John, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And John said, "Happy." And the teacher said, "You didn't understand the question." And he said, "You don't understand life." So the people watching this, we're in a new era. The agentic era is a new era. In my book, Random Acts of Automation, I call it the human capable era. That's when machines are really become human capable. And we all have a tremendous responsibility to have a balance between the goals we have in a business to be more efficient with making people's lives happier. We can do that. You can create better work-life balance. You can reduce anxiety and stress by not overworking people. There are a lot of things that automation has already given us. You could write, Random Acts starts with all of these things that are the unpredictable aspects of automation, that we can't possibly know are going to occur. And it makes a strong case, I think, there. The reality is automation has given us way more benefit than longer lifespans, better water quality, just better lives in general, right? But there are dangers to where we're going. I mean, this juggernaut of a tech industry worldwide is producing products and innovations faster than anyone can understand what the implications are. So the people that can understand what the implications are you. So think about not just how do I automate this better, but should I automate this at all? What's the effect on people? Is the value from the automation going to be distributed reasonably fairly among the employees and the management? These are the kind of questions that I encourage all of us to ask.
Newgen's vision for AI.
But before that, wonderful insight.
Beautiful, yes.
I think our vision is to be able to bring the power of this new era, so to say, to our customers in a way that not just they can use it for better decisioning, but also to be able to trust on this new era. That's what we are aiming for, and hence the entire layer that I spoke about, the agentic systems we're building, the agentic shield that we have, the regulatory compliances, the ethics and governance, the entire ecosystem, the vision that we have for AI is for us to build systems that leverages the true power of AI to make better decisions for our customers.
Interesting. Wow. You just put me in that lull where I'm wanting to think more, ask more, but then we have some time constraints and we're towards the trail end of this podcast recording. So, before we close, Craig, you've come out with your book, right? Invisible Robots in the Quiet of the Night. And then you have Random Acts of Automation.
Correct.
Do tell us a little bit about your books.
I'd love to. Thank you for the opportunity. Random Acts of Automation is actually just came out in January of 2025. Invisible Robots was in 2019. But Random Acts was, I looked around. I wanted to write something, about automation. And basically, when you're doing a book effort, you're interacting with publishers, and you're basically getting rejected all the time. You have to find a lane that is, has a general idea that is not, you don't have 12 people, writing about it. And so what I found out was that there was nothing written for workers that gave them a blueprint on how to navigate the changes that are coming due to AI. And fortunately, at Forrester, we had developed a model of the workforce that was simple to work with. It just had 4 layers: digital elite, which is basically everybody watching this, and the middle workers, what I call frontline service workers, which are basically healthcare companions and people working in warehouses, service workers, and then work-life pioneers, which is a category of people that are growing, which are dropping out of traditional employment and pursuing other aims. So for each of those, I talk about the technology trends that are affecting those, and then the second part of those chapters basically gives them a blueprint on what they have to do. What do they have to become? What type of skills do they need? For the service workers, frontline service workers, avoid these 3 industries because they're not applying automation in the right way. You'll have much better career opportunities if you go into security, versus food processing. So very, very specific, educational, not just improve your human skills, but getting, really drilling down on what specifically those worker personas can do. So I'm hoping that, some mom will say, my son's been in the basement playing video games for 6 months and buys a copy of the book and throws it downstairs and says, go figure out something here. Here's how to do it. Anyway, that's the hope. But thank you for mentioning that.
Thank you so much, because I'm looking forward to pick it up and read. And I've heard some great reviews about the book. I think we need to close this podcast session now. Thank you so much, both of you, for being with me, spending time with me and answering some of the questions that I have. And believe me, these questions are not just from my end, but questions that have come to us from Newgen employees, some communities that we are enrolled in. And it was fantastic talking to both of you. Well, thank you so much. And to all our listeners, stay tuned. There's much more coming up. Thank you.